Good morning, everyone. Last class we talked about the Great Depression. So in this class, we're going to finish the topic by telling about the impacts of the Great Depression. Firstly, after the Great Depression, it made US to change their foreign policy because during the First World War and after the First World War, they involved themselves into the European affairs, right? For example, in the Paris Peace Conference, they were one of the big three to help to make the arrangement. After the First World War, they adopted the Dawes Plan and provide loans and economic aid and investment to different countries. So now, after the Great Depression, it's time for them to be separated because they have some more urgent problem for themselves to solve, right? That is the Great Depression. So it become isolated after the 1929 as it focused more on rebuilding the domestic economy in US. You can see in this cartoon, there are two beds. On one bed is US. Uncle Sam is sleeping lying in the bed and he looked very happy because he said, what a lucky thing we've got separate beds. On the other bed, with the name of Europe, everyone squeezed in a little bit and looked really sick while they were having Nazi fever, fascist fever, you're going to know what is Blitzklaus later, and also Hitlerist, right? So they were having different kinds of problems in Europe. And on the other hand, because of the isolationist policy of US, they just like carefree in this cartoon, right? So their ignorance and tolerance of all these problems in Europe actually lead to one direct result. That is the second impacts of the Great Depression, the rise of totalitarianism. The worldwide economic depression helped the rise and growth of the totalitarianism in certain countries. For example, here we have a poster promise that Hitler would give the German people Arbeit and Brot, that means jobs and bread. So today in this video, we're going to focus on one topic, that is the rise and growth of totalitarianism. Firstly, we need to see what is totalitarianism. For this word, I think one obvious construction is the total part, right? So for totalitarianism, firstly, one important thing is about a total absolute power, like a dictator, like a king and emperor. They were having unlimited authority over the whole country, right? They are above the law, right? So there's a dictator or a political party rules the state. That means maybe this is not only one dictator, maybe there's a team, like a central committee, right? Helping to rule the country. So does that mean that totalitarianism means dictatorship? So what's the difference between a dictatorship and totalitarianism? You have to see totalitarianism is not only about dictating the people. It's not only about they were having a dictator who is making the final decision for the country. It's also about the total control. And like here, the total control and the censorship of the government. The state has total control over most aspects of people's lives. That means you're not only following their rules, also they were like supervising and controlling all aspects of a people's lives. Maybe about like what jobs you're going to work, like what words you're going to say, what things you're going to learn, what you can read from the magazine, what you can like hear from the radio broadcast. Everything were under control. And also the state suppressed all opposition. That means any kind of opposition was not accepted. So what does it mean by total control? Firstly, for example, the control over education. You can see the function here for education is not to let the people be informed or learn new knowledge. It's about the time when schools were used to indoctrinate those fascist or Nazi ideas, while they asked them to support for Nazi party and fascist party. You can only see all those fancy propaganda and poster of these two parties, and also all the good words and how they glorify the leaders of the parties, right? For example, here Even in the grad schools, remember, you are supposed to obey the state, not your parents. So at that time, maybe their parents or siblings, they maybe just mention or say something which counted as improper during that time. For example, criticize any of the policy, complaining about the leader or anything related to that. These students, because they were indoctrinated by these ideas that they should serve for the state, not their parents, so maybe they would just turn their parents or sibling in to the government. So they were like directly become orphans, right? But they think, at that time, they still think they are making the right decision. And of course, control over the mass media was used to glorify the leader and the fascist party. So same thing happened in Nazi Germany, like all these. This is Lenin, which is like on the communist states, right? In Soviet Union. So this is Hitler, and under Hitler, you can see how they were trying to make him as like a hero here, right? One of the most important ceremony at that time is the book burning, right? They burn books and newspapers which criticizing the Nazi party. You can see people, they are all salute to the leader while they were burning the books. And of course, control over religion. In fascist Italy, there was no strict control over religion, but there was a compromise with the Catholic Church, because for fascist Italy, they want to make use of the influence of the Catholic Church. That's why they're trying to like control the church to serve for them instead of directly eliminate them. On the other side, for Nazi, religion were put under strict control instead, and also all the priests, they were persecuted. So there's no freedom of religion at that time in Nazi Germany. So now we have concluded two important features of totalitarianism. Firstly is there's an absolute power, a dictator or a political party who rule over the state, who above the law, right? Secondly, it's about the total control. That means all aspects, for example, mass media, education, religious, right? All different aspects of people's lives were under total control of the state, and any opposition were to be suppressed. So the third feature of this kind of totalitarian state will be an expansionist foreign policy. That means for a totalitarian state, you can see one feature is they will keep expanding their territories and aggressions to other countries. So these are the three major features of totalitarianism, and you can see the difference between a dictatorship and totalitarianism, right? Actually, dictatorship is one of the features of totalitarianism. So for the next part, after we already knew what is totalitarianism, we're going to explain why there's a rise and growth of totalitarianism and totalitarian states. We're going to take Italy and Germany as examples to explain for the rise of totalitarianism. So we can conclude two important factors for the rise and growth of the totalitarianism in Italy and Germany. Firstly, the anti-government sentiment in Italy and Germany. It is a time when people, they start to hate their government. They start to blame the incompetence of their government, and this is a time when they think they need a strong leader, right? So at the same time, when a totalitarian party and the leader had gained popular support, since the government is not solving the problem for the people in Italy and Germany, they tend to support these strong leaders who promise them that they will help them to solve the problem. For example, for Mussolini in Italy, he promised that he will regain power, regain glory, regain respect for the country. And for Germany, Hitler promised that they will provide bread and jobs. They will abolish the humiliating Treaty of Versailles. So you can see these two factors are all very important for the rise of totalitarianism. Firstly, for Italy, the government, they failed to get remember why there's economic recession after the First World War for Italy, and also there's a very deep discontent of the people towards the government after the First World War. It's a time because their government in the Paris Peace Conference, they failed to get the promised land from the Allied powers. So they don't really blame the big three. Instead, they blame the weakness of the government. They are the one who can't help us to get what we deserve, right? Because they failed to get the promised land, and also the huge casualties in their country. And this is the reason why it actually caused some very serious post-war problems, such as, remember this source? This is reflecting the inflation and also the high unemployment rate, right? We already explained how wars lead to these serious social problems. So while the government lead to all these problems and play no significant role in solving this problem, this is the time when they were having this kind of anti-government sentiment. So on the other side, for Germany, they also have some serious problems. Firstly, for the anti-government sentiment is originate from the time when the Weimar Republic, the name of the German government, they signed the humiliating treaty. At that time, people regard them as the traitor of the country. And also after the Great Depression, when US cut their support, remember the reparation triangle, right? It's the third time we mentioned that triangle, so that is very important. You need to be able to use that triangle to explain why there's an anti-government sentiment in Germany after the First World War and then after the Great Depression. So when US cut their support, Britain and France, they kept demanding them to pay the reparations, right? At the old time, they still have loans from US to help them to pay for the reparation at the same time to reconstruct their country. But since the Great Depression, US cut their support. So for Germany, actually, there's no way for them to pay for their reparations. So failed to solve serious post-war problems, such as this is a more serious problem compared to the inflation in Italy, right? This is a hyperinflation and also very high degree of unemployment rate. So you can say at that time, firstly, people, they live in a miserable life, right? And on the other side, the government, they were doing nothing to help them to improve their living conditions or quality of life. So this is a time when some of the strong leaders came to people's side. Firstly, from this poster, you can see how strong and determined the Mussolini looked like, right? This poster actually is showing that the ego, like us, is escaping from this chain. The chain means the Treaty of Versailles. That means Hitler promised that I'm going to abolish the treaty, the humiliating Treaty of Versailles for you. We're just going to ignore all their requests. We're going to rearm our country. We are going to stop paying to those countries. So this is a time when people, they feel like a brighter future under this leader. And also they were like the savior of their future, right? So this is a time when the totalitarian party and the leader had gained popular support and finally ruled the country. In Italy, you need to remember the name of Italy. We have Mussolini and his Fascist party. While in Germany, it's Hitler and his Nazi party. You can see in this picture, actually, these leaders, they constantly showing the strong image of themselves, right? Benito Mussolini, he took advantage of the time by demonstrating a strong leadership and pledging the revival of national glory. So this kind of image is what people really want at that time compared to the weak government, right? I'm going to show you a video to show you how Mussolini performed in those speeches he gave to the people to show his strong leadership and how he determined to the revival of national glory.
Nationalsozialisten und Faschisten wollen den Frieden und werden immer bereit sein, für den Frieden zu arbeiten, einen wirklichen, fruchtbaren Frieden, der die Fragen des Sieghaus des Zusammenlebens der Völker ergeben, nicht mit Stillschweigen übergeht, sondern sie löst. Der ganzen Welt Siegesband fragt, was das Ergebnis der Begegnung von Berlin sein wird. Krieg oder Friede, können wir antworten, der Führer und ich, mit lauter Stimme, Friede!
So in the video, you should learn that how he used all those gestures and facial expressions to show his reliability as a leader, right? So the rise of totalitarianism in Italy. Firstly, the Fascist Party. In 1921, you can see only 2 years after the Paris Peace Conference, right? Mussolini founded the Fascist Party, whose members were mostly jobless men or retired soldiers. That means the veterans. Why he was gathering all these jobless men and retired soldiers? Because it's after the First World War. Since the government, they were not able to get all those promised land from the Allied powers, it has led to a huge amount of jobless men who have a very deep discontent over the government, right? And also for the retired soldiers, they think we almost sacrifice our lives for our country, but for the government, when you came to the Paris Peace Conference, you gain almost nothing for us, right? That's why these people, they also get huge anger towards the government. So they gather all these people who hate the government so they can devote themselves into his party to oppose the government, right? So he claimed he would make Italy strong, respected, and revered. That means we're going to regain our glory under my leadership, right? So, and he further earned support from the middle class. The reason why he can gain support from the middle class is because at that time in Italy, there are different kind of parties formed in Italy. And one of the biggest competitors for Fascist Party is Communist Party. As you all know, for Communist Party, it's about equalize all the materials, right? It's because the poor people, they want to share the materials, the food or other things with all the middle classes and high classes. So for them, for the middle classes or higher classes, they don't really want to share their materials and things with the Communist Party, with the people, with the peasants or the workers, right? This is the reason why instead of supporting Communist Party, middle classes and higher classes, these classes with rich people, they tend to support Fascist Party because Fascist Party is opposing the Communist Party, is the enemy of the Communist Party. Remember what I said in the First World War? The enemy's enemy is my friend, right? So since we share the same enemy, the Communist Party, that is the reason why they are actually giving financial support to the Fascist Party. So, just in 1 year, in 1922, as a member of parliament, Mussolini announced a coup. A coup just means like a rebellion to overthrow the government by calling upon the military members of the Fascist Party because he already gained a huge support from the retired soldiers. That's why actually he has great influence among the military members to march on Rome. What does it mean by march on Rome? Just literally march to Rome. Like here people, they just marching and on their way to Rome, to the government, like here, right? And the army and police, do you think they agree or refuse to suppress the fascists? Because army and police, they should hire by the government and support the government, right? But here, actually, the army and police, they refuse to suppress them. They are supporting them. That is also the reason why only in 1 week, on October the 28th, Italian king handed power to Mussolini. I think this can really be counted as one of the most successful coups in history. The reason is it's very effective. They get their goal in a short period of time. More importantly, there's no blood in this coup, right? They don't really need to sacrifice their lives. There's no blood. A very peaceful coup. This is like a very rare case in history. So after Mussolini gained power to fulfill his promise, he actively initiated foreign expansion. Remember the third features of totalitarian states about the expansionist policy, right? During the period 1923 to 1939, he wanted to regain the territories where we should have obtained at the Paris Peace Conference. So this is like a post at that time. These are all the places promised by the Allied powers, showing Italy was determined to seize these places like here and here, right? You can see this is the foreign expansion of Italy. Firstly, in October 1935, the troops invaded Abyssinia and conquered it in May 1936. And also in 1939, Italy invaded Albania. So I think here you may have one question. That is after the First World War. I think people, they already tired of any wars, right? Any aggression, any expansion. So why Mussolini can persuade all the people to support him to expand to all these countries? So let's find out how he used different ways to persuade people to support him, okay? For example, the following slogan were created by the Fascist Party: believe, obey, fight. So believe in me, obey to the army, obey to my instruction, and then fight for our country. Better to live a day as a lion than 100 years as a sheep. So as a lion, we need to expand. We need to get what we deserve, right? War is to man what maternity is to the woman. A minute on the battlefield is worth a lifetime of peace. So we're sacrificing our peace now. It's just a short-term war while we are fighting for a lifetime peace. So they always promoted this kind of warfare among the Italian through ideological indoctrination. That means it's kind of like brainwashing. Like all these slogans with all those posters were everywhere, and they were repeatedly showing all these slogans to everyone from different ages. So this is an ideological indoctrination. So the forms included teaching people to obey the authority, glorifying war. We are not really doing something bad in a war. We are fighting for a lifetime peace. We are fighting for our country, to glorify our country and our leader, right? And lowering the value of peace. So you can see with all these slogans and their indoctrination policy, like most of the people in Italy, they support this kind of expansion. So the symbol of fascism. Fascist symbol is a fascist origin in the ancient Rome. The fascist, it actually means power. And you can see a bound bundle of wooden rods, they tie together, so it means unity. So we finished talking about the rise of fascism, right? So on the other side, we have Hitler. You can see these two people, actually, they were good friends, right? They like each other a lot. So when Hitler find out Mussolini can be like so successful in such a short time, he decided to learn from the best, right? Your success in March on Rome is very impressive. I'm going to learn from the best. This is the reason why Hitler, he also tried to start the beer hall putsch. Putsch is a little like coup or like rebellion or uprising at that time. You have to see why in beer hall. Actually, beer hall is a very important place in Germany at that time, because in the early 20th century Germany, many of the largest cities of southern Germany had beer halls where hundreds or even thousands of people, like in this picture, would socialize in the evening, drink beer, and participate in the political and social debates. So such beer hall also became the host of occasional political rallies. So this is This picture was took from one of those political rallies. And also what Hitler did is he directly go on one of those beer hall and go on the stage to share about his ideas of building Germany as a strong country. So on November the 8th, 1923, you can see this time, this only a year after the success of March on Rome, right? Hitler and his Nazi party attempted to overthrow the Weimar Republic. But the coup was failed and Hitler was arrested. But still, this kind of failure can still be important because at old times, not much people know about Hitler, but after the failure of beer hall putsch, people start to recognize that there's one person who named Hitler, and he's having one of the new idea of forming a country which is totally different from the government. So it's important because the coup brought Hitler to the attention of Germans. And also, when he was arrested in the prison, he didn't really do nothing. He wrote his book, My Struggle. In this book, Mein Kampf, it means my struggle in English. So in this book, he conclude and summarize his ideas of forming a country. According to this table, when do you think should be the turning point of Hitler's support? Because this is the percentage of vote for the Nazi party. For me, I think it should be 90-30, right? Because before that, even though right after the beer hall putsch, he's gained more support from the people, but it actually decreased from 1924 to 1928. While in 1930, he gained a huge support, and actually in 1933, he is the largest party in Germany. It's because actually before the Great Depression, US started their Dawes Plan when US started to support the German government to rebuild their country and also pay the reparations, right? So this is years when the economic condition in Germany has improved. And also people start to try to support the government because they think our living conditions is more important, right? What has changed? Firstly, US cut their support. Secondly, Britain and France, they urge for their reparations. That means so many years of reconstruction of the countries has suddenly failed, right? Because of the Great Depression. So this is the time when Nazi party really start to gain support from the people. While Hitler promised them that jobs and bread and also abolishment of the Treaty of Versailles, they are not paying any of the reparations to Britain or France. So he wrote to Chancellor, the leader of the country. As a gifted speaker, he promised he would create jobs and rebuild the economy for Germany after the Great Depression. So he gained popular support. In 1932, the Nazi Party became the largest party, while in 1933, Hitler became the Chancellor. And actually, he used the name Führer, a very unique name to show his high identity, while Mussolini on the other side also have his own name, Illudius, also the leader of the country. You can see all these were from their speeches, very, I won't say crazy, but it's really dramatic, right? Maybe this is how they can attract people to their speech. So maybe next time when you're presenting your idea, try to make use of these gestures in your speech. Thank you. We are going to make Germany great again. Don't you think this kind of slogan is sounds really familiar, right? So of course, still, the third feature of totalitarian state, that is expansionist policy. So same for Germany, that they keep expanding to other countries. For example, firstly, they remilitarize the demilitarized land, the Rhine land. And then they further annexed Austria in 1938, and then they entered into Sudetenland, which is a part of Czechoslovakia, and then they further captured the whole Czechoslovakia, and last but not the least, they invade Poland, which triggered the Second World War. So, the symbol of Nazism is the swastika. It was original from India and actually means good luck and happiness, but Nazi actually adopted as their logo, and from here it represents the Aryan purity and superiority.
Nazi ideology was a worldview that claimed to explain everything about the world and how it functions. At its core, the Nazi worldview was racist and biological, positing that the so-called Aryan race, primarily the North Europeans, was the superior race of human beings to which nearly all positive human development in science, technology, art, architecture, and other fields could be attributed. All other races and peoples, save the Jews, were viewed as occupying rungs below the Aryans in a sort of hierarchy of races. Various West Europeans, such as the French and Italians, were relatively high in the hierarchy, and others, particularly the Slavic peoples, very low. The Aryans' innate superiority granted them the right and obligation to rule over other races and peoples for the benefit of humankind. The Jews, in complete contrast, were seen as a kind of anti-race, dangerous, inhuman beings in seemingly human form. They were viewed alternatively as microbes and parasites, or as devils, that is, inhuman creatures with superhuman power, a threat to the very existence of...
So, in this video, we talk about one thing, right? The rise and growth of totalitarian states. Firstly, you need to know the three features of totalitarian states, and then you need to be able to explain why there's a rise and growth of totalitarianism in Italy and also in Germany. And also you need to know some basic information, how Hitler gained his power and how Mussolini gained his power, March on Rome, and also the Beer Hall Putsch. And also, last but not the least, you need to know how Great Depression played a part as the rise of totalitarianism.